Hello, hello. Welcome to Garland Nixon's YouTube and Facebook channel. And we're just about ready to go. Let me grab my notes. We've got big things to talk about. Good evening. It's Saturday evening or good night or good something. I don't know. I think you're only supposed to say good night if it's the end of the conversation or something. So I'm going to go with good evening. It's about 10:19 here in Maryland, just outside the nation's capital, Pasadena, Maryland, along the sunny shores of the Chesapeake Bay. And tonight I'm going to talk about an interesting term, anti-intellectualism. In the context of today's politics, I'm going to talk about it, what it means, how it's being used, and what it means to me. Okay. So if you go look up the term anti-intellectualism, it'll say things like, people that don't trust in science and don't trust in education and things of that nature, right? I'm going a little different with something like that. This is not to me about science and it's not about education. It's about something far different, right? Let me tell a quick story of a guy who's a reporter. I actually met him in South America and read a lot of his stuff, and he's an intellectual. And he told a story. I'm not even gonna get into his name because who cares? He told this story, and the story was about the Washington Post. It was about the Afghan occupation, and they dropped this big bomb they called it the Moab, the mother of all bombs, right? So they dropped this gigantic bomb somewhere in Afghanistan, and the Washington Post reports that it was dropped in a remote area, that X amount of enemy were killed, and that no civilians were injured, right? This is the largest bomb in the world that's not nuclear, right? Largest explosion since Hiroshima on the planet, right? And he's like, okay, and he was at like a press conference, and lo and behold, he asked the person from the Washington Post, I read your story, no civilians killed, X amount of enemy killed. How do you know that? Well, I'm not going to get into it, but a whole bunch of things occurred. And in the end, here's what it came down to. They got it from a Pentagon press release. The Washington Post printed that it was in an area where there were no civilians, and that X9, 8, 9, 15, whatever Taliban were killed. That went into the Washington Post. And if you read the Washington Post, you'd be like, okay, well, hey, this is the Washington Post, one of the papers of record. Certainly, it's got to be true, right? They probably did some kind of in-depth investigation and got the numbers. Maybe satellite information. Who knows, right? The Washington Post printed a PR press release from the Pentagon. Now, there are people who went to the area. There are people who investigated, looked at the crater, talked to the people that lived in the area and said, hey, what can you tell us? They're like, oh, there was lots of people lived over there. They were all slaughtered, dead, just torn to shreds, blown, disintegrated, right? The people who lived in the area said, no, there was a lot of people there, and that bomb killed a whole lot of civilians. The Washington Post said, no, certainly not, right? So here's what it comes down to. That's the Washington Post. Sadly, there are a lot of people that trust the news. But forget the news for a minute. And it's hard. Here's what the question becomes. How do we know what we believe? How do we really know what we believe is true? That's my issue with anti-intellectualism. It has nothing to do with science, to Garland. It has nothing to do with actual knowledge, with education. None of that stuff. You don't have to have a PhD. You don't have to have anything. Simple as this. If I believe something and you say, why do you believe that? I should be able to tell you. If I can't, to me, that's anti-intellectualism, right? Uh, let me give you an example. In America, you got a lot of people that'll say they hate things. Example. I recently, one of my Facebook friends, and she puts up that, oh, people are mean and blah, 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 and people aren't doing things and there's censorship and communism has come to America. And I thought to myself, I've read about communism. I know what it is. I study things. If I want to talk about something, I'm going to study it, right? Studied communism, history of it, socialism, things of that nature, studied them. So I could research and I could talk accurately about these things. But I didn't know it had anything to do with being nice to people, right? I'm like, this is odd. So my comment was, it doesn't sound to me like you know what communism is. And then somebody else quote said, oh, well, if you want communism, go to another country. And I'm like, to me, that's anti-intellectualism, right? If I say I hate fill in the blank and someone says, I don't think you know what that is, then I should say, yeah, I do. This is what it is. And this is, no, I don't say, well, if you want that, go to another country. Why? That person didn't even stop to consider that I was making an intellectual comment, a comment that says, if you say, you know what, I'm not going to wear pajamas. I hate pajamas. So capitalism sucks. Then Garland's going to say, what the hell's capitalism have to do with pajamas? Right? If you hate capitalism, explain why. Hey, I'm all ears. If you hate socialism, if you love it, I'm all ears. But don't say, I hate capitalism, and I say, explain to me why, what it does, how it works. I don't know. I hate socialism. Socialists are terrible. Socialism is coming into America. Okay, tell me a bit about socialism. It's bad. That's anti-intellectualism to me. I'm running this on my radio show time and again. And the two things I can get to, I'll get to one of them real quick. Russiagate's an easy one, right? Somebody calls in. This is a while back. This is when everybody's going over the, what was it? The Trump Tower meeting, the infamous Trump Tower meeting. Well, I was curious about the Trump Tower meeting. You know what I do when I'm curious about things? I research them so that I can speak accurately about them. So that if I have a conversation or a debate and somebody makes a point that I disagree, I can rebut that point. I don't just say, that means such and such. And when someone says, hey, oh yeah, well, tell me about that, I go, oh, I don't really know. Because at that point, if you make a statement and somebody says, all right, let's go a little deeper on that statement. Why do you believe that? And you can't? Then you just have a superficial, I'll go with different. You're just repeating what someone else told you. That's all you're doing. If you make a statement right now, if you say, well, Garland, you're wrong because of such and such. And I say to you, all right, that's reasonable. That's a start. Go a little deeper. You told me I'm wrong because of this. Make your point. And you can't? Then that's anti-intellectualism. You're not using your brain. You're not using your noggin. You're repeating what other people have told you. Anytime you make a statement and someone asks you to go a little deeper, to explain your position, to explain that if someone says, I disagree, and you're unable to, that to me is anti-intellectualism, because you have at best a superficial understanding of what you're talking about. At worst, you're just repeating somebody else's talking points. You're not even a human being at that point. You're just an expression of somebody else's thoughts. Let's go further. So when we talk about, so let me finish that. So it was a caller on my show, WPFW 89.3 FM, great radio station, 50,000 watt FM station on the Pacific Network in Washington, D.C. All right. So this guy calls in and he's like, the Trump Tower meeting. Because at the time I was telling my listeners, look, guys, I don't care if you love Trump, if you hate Trump, the Mueller investigation, you guys are sadly mistaken. You truly believe that at some point Robert Mueller is going to come with the end of an investigation and say, there you go, we got Trump, he's a Russian puppet. And I'm like, I literally said this. I said, I would sooner believe that Donald Trump jumped off the roof of the White House and flapped his arms and flew to the ground than I would believe the whole Russiagate thing. It is preposterous. If you look into it, it falls apart. It's another one of those things. There are certain things that you can't both research and believe. Russiagate is one of them. If you research it, you can't believe it. Because the more you research it, the more obvious it becomes that it's absurd, that it's ridiculous, right? Okay, so let's go on. So the guy says, mid-Trump Tower meeting, Manafort. I'm telling you, that proves. Now, this guy's on a 50,000 watt station, right? He made a complete idiot out of himself. That proves the Trump Tower meeting proves collusion. And I said, this is the type of thing that if you know me, you know this is the type of thing that I would say in earnest. I'm not trying to be, I'm honest saying this. So I say to this guy on the air, you know, I've researched the Trump Tower meeting. And I actually got a interpreter, the attorney at the Trump Tower meeting from Russia, Natalia Veselnitskaya. I got an attorney. I was able to get got an interpreter. She has a minimal command of English, but mostly she doesn't speak English. I had a good interpreter. I was able to interview her. Me and a friend of mine got an interview. Okay, talk to her. I've done a lot of research on that. That did not prove collusion. Based on my research, absolutely didn't prove collusion. And there's a reason it didn't, because collusion is absurd concept. That was my point. The guy says, it does prove collusion. And I said, look, dude, I'll tell you what. My research didn't show it, but I'm open. And I wasn't lying. I wasn't like trying to be snarky. I was telling the truth. This is me. I don't want to be right. I want to know the truth. So I'm like, look, that makes sense to me, but I'm all ears. Dude, you are on the air. You tell me right now what I haven't found. You tell me how the Trump Tower meeting shows collusion. And the guy said, his answer was, well, I don't want to go around in circles with you. I said, I didn't ask you to go around in circles with me. I'm an honest man. I'm all ears. You tell me. Oh, I don't have time. You could see. So I let the guy off the hook. I could have kept driving him, but I knew that he didn't have an answer. So I'm like, well, that's okay, sir. I understand. You believe it's collusion. Right now, maybe you don't exactly have your thoughts together. Thank you. I just let the guy off the hook. There's no use beating up on a caller. I feel like this. If you're going to call my show, thanks for listening to the show. Even if you kind of sound like a schmuck, I'm not going to call you a schmuck. I'm going to say thanks for calling the show. I think that people who have radio shows or anything like that, if you have any kind of journalistic opportunity where you talk to people who are listening, I believe you should be respectful towards those people, because that's your audience. They're listening to you, right? So I didn't beat up on a guy. He just said what I already knew. I'd already did research. I knew the Trump Tower. It was absurd to say that showed collusion. It was absurd to argue that there was collusion, right? But the thing about it was this. The resistance people hated Trump. And let me tell you, there's a great book. I'm looking at it right now. It's called The Confidence Game: Why We Fall for It Every Time, by Maria Konnikova, right? And it's about the con game. It's about con artists, the confidence game. A con artist means a confidence artist. They gain your confidence and they take advantage of you, right? And if you read that book, what you'll find, you'll see books. I'm a big book person, books all over the place, read all the time, right? Again, I'm a researcher. That's what I do, right? So here's the bottom line. If a con artist knows your weakness, if they know what you like, what you don't like, what you're afraid of, what you hate, if they know where your emotions are taking you, they got you. They got you. They own you, because they're going to give you what you want. They're going to tell you what you want to believe. They're going to stroke you where you want to be stroked, and they're going to take you for every penny, right? So what I think happened was, when we talk about how do we know what we knew, we had an intelligence community, and I include our media because they're so inculcated with the intelligence community, that knew that there were a lot of people out here that hated Trump. With all their might, they hated Trump, right? Knowing that, they knew that anything they told these people, again, this is anti-intellectualism, based on that emotion of anger and hatred towards Trump, they knew that anything they told these people about Trump, the people would believe it. And if they didn't believe it, they'd accept it anyway and pretend that they believed it because it felt good to believe it, right? That was anti-intellectualism. To me, a person who considers myself an intellectual, not because I'm smarter than anybody else, but because I got sense enough to figure out I need to know what the hell I'm talking about. Particularly because I am a journalist, I feel that I have a responsibility to know what I'm talking about. I have a responsibility to communicate information to you. So what do we have now? We got the QAnon people. We've got the our media now, it's all QAnon. Oh, the QAnon are doing, the QAnon's going to destroy, the QAnon believe madness. They believe Marjorie Taylor Greene believes crazy QAnon stuff, right? And I would say this, yeah, we got a lot of people in this country to believe some crazy shit. We got people, I mean, people say stuff to me sometimes and I'm just like, Okay, all righty then, right? I don't know what to say, right? And the whole QAnon thing. Okay, there's a Satan worshiping pedophiles, and Donald Trump was going to fix it all. And the absurd part of it was the belief that there's somebody in the system, that was Donald Trump, that's going to save you. I don't know how much you know about this empire, the American empire, how much you know about this system. There ain't nothing in this system that works for you. There ain't no one. There is no one. There is no place. There is no part of this empire that's working for the little guy. So if you can be convinced that Donald Trump or somebody in this system is working to take out the evil people, and one of these days they're all going to go down, all these what is it, like on a particular day, thousands of warrants, all these people get arrested because there's somebody in the system, somebody within the context of this rapacious, thieving pirate empire that's going to fix it all. This empire that goes around the world overthrowing countries, an empire that lied us into a war in Iraq and killed 1 million people, 1 million people, to steal their resources. And you think that somewhere in that machine is something that's going to look out for the little guy and fix it all? God knows you are sorely mistaken if you believe that. But on the other side, you see, so while we got all of these people, oh, QAnon, they're crazy, they're stupid, that's ridiculous. How dare they believe these absurd things? They make no sense. And I agree, they are absurd and they do make no sense, right? But while they're screaming this, what they won't accept, the discussion that doesn't happen, is that in the mainstream media, they've been saying things for the last 4 years that make as little sense as QAnon. As little sense. Let's go back to weapons of mass destruction. Oh yes, Saddam Hussein's going to attack us with weapons. They said he could attack us within 45 minutes. He don't have a navy with ships to get over to the East Coast. How's he going to do that? I remember watching one thing on the news, and they were showing these drones, and they said wooden drones. You know what they were? They were like something that you made in Boy Scouts. You know, they were like 5 or 6 feet long. They were wood. They had a little motor on them. They had a little propeller on them. So help me, they looked like something that a bunch of Boy Scouts would make. And they said, yes, Saddam Hussein can launch these from outside off the East Coast to come into the US and to use weapons and to use his chemical weapons. Well, he didn't have chemical weapons, and he couldn't launch them off the coast of the US because he didn't have a ship that could make it over here to do it, unless he put it on maybe some oil freighter or something. I don't know. He didn't have that kind of a navy, unable to do it. But they told the Americans, and guess what? The American people were like, well, I guess he's got weapons of mass destruction. How do you know? The New York Times said it. All right. The problem is with the American people is that should have been all you needed to know. How many times has somebody lied to you? So after that happened, then Americans still are suckers. Now it's, one thing after another. It was, what was it? Al-Qaeda was the boogeyman. ISIS, oh, ISIS is coming to get us. Putin, oh, for sure, Putin's going to get us. Whatever boogeyman they give the suckers. I'm not going to say that. Let me be nice, because there's people probably maybe watching the show right now who bought into one of the boogeymen that they give you, that may look back and say, well, I did believe weapons of mass destruction, and I was afraid of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and man, that stuff didn't pan out. But let me tell you, China, they really the last boogeymen they gave us, now those, all lies, all a bunch of lies. But the boogeymen that they're giving us today, why, it's certainly reasonable today. You're silly, Garland, that you don't believe it's either Russia if you're a blue anon, or China if you're QAnon. Right. Either way, they got the boogeyman there for you, dude. You pick your boogeyman. The CIA's got him. And if you're sucker enough to bite the hook, go right ahead. I ain't doing it. I know X amount of years from now, it won't be Russia and China. It'll be another country if we survive, if we don't all get nuked, which seems to be the road they're taking us down, huh? So my point being this, that to me, that, if you listen to my show, if you listen to a lot of my shows, you'll hear me when I talk about the two parties, that I refer to the two parties as two brainwashed cults. And that's what we've gotten to. To me, if you're still stuck in the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, And you still think that they're like two separate parties who are fighting, who are at odds with each other, and one of them's good and one of them's bad. Let me give you an example of how little sense Russiagate makes. I mean, what a sucker's game bet, right? But okay, let me go on. So last year, Nancy Pelosi's like Moscow Mitch. They all decided Moscow Mitch. I didn't even know what that means. Moscow sounded good though. You got to admit, it's good marketing. Moscow Mitch. It's like freedom fries. Freedom fries. In fact, I met and spoke and had lunch with a guy who was Walter Jones. He was he's since passed away. Very nice guy. He was a Republican, and I'm a lefty, you know. And but I had lunch with him on Capitol Hill with some friends, and we were talking to him about some things at the time. This was like 2009, but he went from pro-Iraq war. He came up with the term freedom fries because the French wouldn't go along with the Iraq war. And so they changed the name of the fries in the cafeteria at the House of Representatives building from French fries to freedom fries. Walter Jones is the guy that came up with that. I talked to Walter Jones later on. He completely changed his mind. He completely went against war, and he, you know, he was sorry for that, right? So that was the stupidity of, you know, that. So today I probably lost. I'm screwing around all day. I probably lose my track a little bit with the ADD. But let's go on. So where we end up with Russiagate is this: we end up going from the Washington Post, the New York Times, the MSNBC, CNN, Fox, everybody lying to us about any number of boogeymen. And now we get to Russiagate, and people believe the same liars. People believe the same thing, the same lies from the same people, because it feels good and it's your enemy. You know, if you are a Democrat, if you're a member of the resistance, you liked Hillary, you wanted her to win, and Trump, who is a objectionable character to you, lost, and you can't believe or accept emotionally that Hillary lost to Trump. You can't accept it. It can't be true. So when somebody, the con artist, knows that you can't believe it, they give you something to make you feel good. Well, it couldn't be Trump. Really? Oh, it couldn't be, huh? Could it be the Russians? Yeah, that's a good idea. Oh, yeah, the Russians. There you go. And then they go with Russiagate, one of the most absurd. Like I said, you go piece by piece. When somebody says the Russians interfered in 2016, the Russians did that, it sounds scary. When you go bit by bit by bit by bit, when you take every part of Russiagate apart, it falls apart. When you say, well, give me one part of it. Well, here's one. Well, Julian Assange got the Russians hacked in. The Russians hacked in to the DNC computer, and they then took a bunch of emails. They gave them to Julian Assange. Julian Assange worked with the Russians. Well, that sounds scary, doesn't it? Julian Assange worked with the Russians, until you look into it and you find out some very odd things going, but just not just the odd things. There's something concrete here that argues against that. Number one, and that is that the software, well, first of all, the company that checked the DNC servers was called CrowdStrike, owned by one of the co-founders was former FBI, worked with Jim Comey. So Comey comes over there, there's the servers, and Comey never looks at the servers. The FBI never looked at the servers. That, my friends, let me tell you something. You may not know about this about me. I retired in law enforcement. I retired holding the rank of major. At one point, I was the commander of the investigations division. I taught investigations. I was a commander of the training division. I taught it to recruits. I taught it in college. I taught criminal justice. I know a little teeny bit about investigations. And let me tell you this, there ain't no way in hell that you go look at those servers who are supposedly compromised by a foreign entity and you don't seize them. And you don't say, them servers ain't going nowhere. You put an FBI agent watching them, you go to court, you get a warrant, you take the servers and you examine them to find out. FBI didn't do that. They trusted the word of the company CrowdStrike. In fact, what we found out, and I go on, I researched this, what we found out during the Roger Stone trial is that the FBI, they only were briefed by CrowdStrike. Now, the FBI said, yes, we talked to CrowdStrike, and according to what CrowdStrike told us, they told us that the Russians hacked into the FBI's, the DNC's computers, and they took emails. Right? That's what the FBI said. During the Roger Stone trial, they asked, what was the date? The FBI said, well, we never received any technical information. We only got a briefing. So here's what the FBI said. We believe, CrowdStrike, that the Russians broke into the DNC computer. Really? Did they give you anything? Nah, they just told us that and we believed it. So something else happened of great consequence. The co-founder and CEO of CrowdStrike was brought before Congress and asked about that. And when he was asked what date the Russians took what did he say? What the Russians allegedly took these emails off of the DNC servers and gave them to Julian Assange, right? So they in the CEO of CrowdStrike was asked in front of Congress under oath, what was the date the Russians did that? And interestingly enough, his answer was, we don't have any evidence that anything was ever exfiltrated from the servers, meaning taken. The CEO of the only company that examined the DNC servers says, we have no evidence that anyone took anything off of those servers. He said, it looks like somebody was preparing to, but they never took anything. So wait a minute. Wait a minute. This was in front of Adam Schiff's committee in early 2017. So in early 2017, Adam Schiff knew that there was no evidence that the Russians or anyone else took a single email off the DNC server, and he continued to argue it. And you have people today, most resistance people still believe that. Still believe it. And here's what I say to him. How do you know? Well, I hate Julian Assange. He worked with the Russians. And I said, where's the evidence? How do you know? Huh? Let's talk about it. You say he did. I say he didn't. I can substantiate my argument. Can you substantiate yours? Huh? Why? Because they don't know. Because if they knew, they would say, well, I used to believe that, but I looked into it and it seems to be false. But they didn't believe it because it was true. You see, that's anti-intellectualism. Anti-intellectualism, to me, to use your noggin, to use your head, says, I'm not going to take a position. I'm not going to argue a position unless I know enough about that position to substantiate what I'm believing in. To, if somebody says you're wrong, to rebut them. And if somebody proves that I'm wrong, say, I'm glad you proved me wrong. Not just simply say, oh, you'll never prove me wrong. I'll fight you to the death. If you prove me wrong, I'm going to thank you because I don't want to be right. I want to know the truth. I don't want to be right. I want to be correct. See, there's a difference between right and correct. Right means you won the argument. Correct means you have the proper answer. A lot of people win arguments and they're incorrect. They're right because they won the argument. That's all it is. They ain't correct. I don't want to be right. I want to be correct. If I say something today and you're like, well, Garland, I can prove you otherwise, fine. But don't give me some, and this is the other people. Well, I know it's true. Why? Because if you think about this and think about that, and they do this motivated reasoning where they believe something, and they do it backwards. Instead of doing an investigation, doing research to figure out what the truth is, and then believing the product of their research, they come up with a belief, and they do it the other way around. Once they believe something, they do an investigation to prove what they already believe. That is called motivated reasoning. I already have something that I believe, and I'm going to reason myself to get there. I'm motivated to ignore things that disprove what I believe and only grab the things that I believe. What if I have an ideology? What if I'm a conservative? I'm a progressive. I'm a liberal. I'm a whatever. And I believe something and there's something out there that proves me wrong. Do I accept that because I want to be correct? Or do I argue against it because I have an ideology that is brittle that I'm trying to protect? And then do that and just accuse somebody that I disagree with. Well, you know me, I'm a conservative or whatever. I'm progressive. We progressives, conservatives, whatever, we believe the truth. Now the people on the other side, you know, they're just motivated reasoning there. Garland, you hit the nail on the head. The people that disagree with me, they do that. Now me, I'm on the money. I don't. I just constantly research and I'm ready to change my beliefs tomorrow if in fact I can find something different. So, do I believe? What do I think about QAnon? I think it is preposterous. And here's the giveaway to me, QAnon. Here's the dead giveaway to me. The same that was the dead giveaway for Russiagate. These poor saps. I watched for like 2 years, right? This investigation's going on, and these poor idiots. It's like Robert Mueller. Oh, if you could have seen, if it's there might be somebody that listens to my show in PFW every Friday, and you know I argued with the people. Let me tell you, Garland, I think Mueller's got something on Trump. You think? You think he's got something on Trump? Such as, well, you don't know what he doesn't have. That ain't an argument. People literally use that argument. And that's anti-intellectualism. This is what people would say, well, I haven't seen any evidence. You don't know what he has. That's not an argument. That's the opposite of an argument. I don't need a discussion about what I don't know. I could talk for 1,000,000 years till the day I die. What, Garland, what don't you know? I don't know what size shoe Charles Barkley wears. There's a thought. I don't know how long the longest hair on my head is. I could tell you for 10 years, but it's not an argument to say you don't know something. So I looked into it. I was in 2016, I was a Bernie Sanders guy. I'm a lefty, but that ain't got nothing to do with right or wrong. I am a left. People that know me know that Garland Nixon is a lefty, but I run afoul of a lot of people, so-called lefties and liberals oftentimes, simply because my ideology has nothing to do with what's right and wrong, what turns up based on my research. And the poor resistance saps who basically, Robert Mueller was a messiah for them. He was a saint. They literally, I could watch Saturday Night Live. They were singing Christmas carols. We wish you a Mueller Christmas. A Mueller Christmas? And you're watching that and you don't realize that you're being brainwashed? Why? Because you believe that a person who was a product of this system, he was dead system guy, Robert Mueller, and you believe that some guy in the system was going to fix the system, was going to some kind of way, was going to deliver you from this system. He was going to deliver you from the horrible, evil Trump and the Russians and all that. And I'm like, oh, God, you guys, you just ain't going to learn, are you? When, I send you to school and you eat the teacher, right? So they believe that somebody was, and the QAnon people, it's the same thing. They believe there's somebody on the inside of this rapacious empire and that person's going to, it's the same crap. The origins of them, we know for sure that Russiagate, let me add this to you, the poor Russiagators. If you believe something, and you know for a fact that what you believe originated with the CIA, dude, you're going in the wrong direction. Do I have to tell anybody that? Should I ever have to say, if your thought and belief system started with the CIA, yeah, probably about 99% sure it's bullcrap, right? Russiagate clearly started with the CIA. That's where it started. That CIA started, John Brennan started the whole concept. Trump is about, now, don't get me wrong. If you look into it, you will find that Hillary Clinton began the whole Russiagate thing. We could get into that. There's a lot of things people don't know about that. But bottom line was the CIA started pushing it. John Brennan started pushing it. It's crap. And people believed it because it felt good. And that's what the CIA knows. They know if they want you to get something to believe something, they know how to get you there. Fear, anger, any kind of emotions. If they can get under those, you're going to believe what they're telling you. I ain't. So now let's go on to why I say, to me, Russiagate and QAnon are kissing cousins. But see, the thing about it is, here's the difference. Let me give you a difference between Russiagate and QAnon. This is the only difference. They're equally absurd. But Russiagate could get us nuked. Russiagate pushes, what did QAnon got? It got a bunch of poor schmucks. In a way, the people who wandered through the Capitol, in a way, I feel sorry for them. When I look at them, when I listen to them online and see the poor crap they believed, I'm like, oh God, I feel sorry for these people. These are truly, they believed QAnon stuff. They believed just absurdities. So in a way, I'm like, they were misled so bad. They were dragged like lambs dragged to the slaughter. I don't feel afraid that they were going to overthrow the country. I feel that they were a pathetic lot. Now, the the mainstream media wants to, act like they were the 82nd Airborne who were rappelling out of black helicopters to take out the Capitol. That's not quite the case. They were wandering around like, hey, look, a laptop. Can I take this with me? Some guys walking around with Nancy Pelosi's lectern. They were walking away with like knickknacks and stuff from offices of members of Congress. They didn't realize what they were. It's sad. It's sad, right? But that's who these poor suckers were. But that's what you get from QAnon. You got, remember, what was it? Pizzagate. And this poor bastard comes from North Carolina to Comet Pizza. I know they've gotten pizza there before. He's believing some Pizzagate. He comes in there with a freaking weapon, threatens people, fires off around. The cops get him. They take him away. The poor guy goes to jail. Because why? Because he believed some absurdity. It's a sad state of affairs. Luckily, nobody died, right? But let's talk about Russiagate. It's infinitely more dangerous because what Russiagate does, QAnon, you make an idiot out of yourself and you wander through the Capitol and some of those people are going to get some time. Sadly, a couple people died. Russiagate now will have our country acting aggressively. And if you didn't know this, let me tell you this. The United States and Russia, the two countries, have 95% of all nuclear weapons on this earth. So now Joe Biden is confronting China. He's confronting Russia. He is lighting matches in the powder magazine. Did you ever see the old Bugs Bunny show where Bugs Bunny and Yosemite Sam were in the ship and down in the hole, and they run down the ship and it's dark and they're lighting matches and they're in the powder magazine, right? They're in a place where all the gunpowder is for the cannons and they're lighting matches and they're throwing them down, lighting them, and finally the ship blows up. That's what Joe Biden's administration is doing. Trump was doing it with China already. If that wasn't stupid enough, now the real big nuclear power, the power with the real nukes, is Russia, and this idiot is going to go and he's going to they're sending ships. All it takes is one missile to go off, one mishap, one person to read their radar wrong and see a flock of seagulls and think it's an incoming missile and fire, and every human being, everybody you know, everybody you've ever met, your wife, your kids, your husband, your cousins, everybody's dead. All of them. Very, very quickly. It is not worth the risk, particularly when Russia and China don't want a war. So now Joe Biden, thanks to Russiagate, which is a really, let's face it, it is a intelligence operation. Thanks to that, all of our lives are in danger. So I say, QAnon, to me, it creates an environment where people can make an idiot of themselves. Sadly, and if you believe QAnon, you ain't that far away from it in the first place. But Russiagate creates an environment and a dynamic where one little slip of a missile or misread of a radar or something like that could end it all for humankind. You tell me which one is worse. You tell me which one is worse. For all of those people that push Russiagate, they're like, QAnon, oh, QAnon's terrible. You bastards are pushing an absurdity that could cost us everything. We could just be a black rock afterwards, where there once was humans. And if some people from another planet, they're like, gee, look at that dark and cold. Do you think maybe, I wonder if there was ever actually people. Let's land on it and look. Holy moly, there were cities and everything. How'd they die? That's weird. They're all dead. I wonder this is weird. That's what'll happen. Somebody from another planet will land and say, how'd that happen? Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you what happened. MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the BBC News, they all got together and said, hey, we'll show those Ruskies. Let's push Russiagate. Yeah, is it all a lie? I don't care. That's anti-intellectualism. So when the so-called left now, God knows, let's not talk into who, whatever. That, first of all, forget those words anymore. What do you think? You think Mitch McConnell's the right and Nancy Pelosi's the left? And Chuck Schumer's the left, and no, they're on the same team. They're on the same team, left, right. That's for us to argue about. They don't argue about that crap. They're arguing. They got the same donors, getting the same checks from the same people, and they got us arguing with each other over foolishness. And they are getting paid, right? So they're pushing, they're arguing. These are people. See, the thing about it is anti-intellectualism because these are people who have educations. They're well educated. Rachel Maddow's like highly educated. She went to a really good school, so-called good school, right? And she's very educated, so she ain't stupid. She knows that Russiagate garbage she's pushing. And no, let me change it. It's not that she knows it's true or false. She doesn't care if it's true or false. She's getting $30,000 a night. $30,000 a night will make anything true. $30,000 a night, it doesn't matter. And they say things that are preposterous. Every night, Rachel Maddow gets on there. I'll never forget. She got on there. I saw the video. Many you probably seen it. Rachel Maddow gets on and says, there's a polar vortex. It's going to be 7 degrees in, whatever, Sheboygan, Indiana, you name it, right? Imagine. Now, you're in trouble. You would know it ain't news when a so-called news talking head starts off with the words imagine, right? Imagine. Think about that. Hey, Garland, let's watch a Garland's video. All right, we'll watch Garland Nixon's video. Let's start here. And I come on and I say, imagine. Don't imagine. Tell me what you know. I don't need imagination. I can go take a painting class if I want to use my imagination. Creative writing. I didn't turn on MSNBC for somebody to tell me to imagine. I turned on there because I wanted to see the news. Is there a wildfire? Did something happen? Give me something factual. Not for Rachel Maddow to say it's 7 degrees in Sioux Falls. Imagine if Russia and China were to turn off your electricity, heat, and then you would freeze. First of all, why do I need to imagine Russia or China coming to Sioux Falls or wherever the hell she planned, the country, little teeny town she chose? Why, Rachel Maddow, do I need to imagine that Putin and Xi are going to come to my little town and turn off the heat, and then I'm going to freeze to death? I need to imagine that because then I'll be scared. And that's your plan. Your plan is for me to be frightened. And if I'm frightened of them, you see, if I'm frightened of Russia, if I'm frightened of China, if I'm concerned about what they're doing in Russia or China, Xi's coming to get me, you know what I won't do? Who is it that I won't talk about? Who is it that I won't question? The ruling elite class here. You see, as long as my enemy is in Mexico, China, Venezuela, Iran, whatever, as long as my enemy is there, I ain't looking at the ruling elite class here. And so now I sit around all day and I'm thinking, hey, what is the people in China? What are they planning for me now? I know they're up to good. And what about those darn Russians? I'm sure they're plotting and planning. The Iranians and the Venezuelans, whoo-hoo, they're up to no good. Some tomfoolery going on there for sure. No, let me tell you one thing. There's some tomfoolery going on Wall Street, Silicon Valley, the military-industrial complex, all these countries up in Seattle. I tell you, there's some tomfoolery. That's your enemies, and they're the one giving you your enemies, and they're giving you enemies 10,000 miles away. China, Russia, whoever the hell. Next, they're going to tell you they're on the moon. Hey, let me tell you something. Don't look at us. Sure, did we send your jobs overseas? Fair enough. Did we rig the stock market and the economy so we could get every dime? You got me on that one. However, don't look at us. Your real enemies are on the moon. There's a moon base up there and moon people. And Americans are so stupid, they'd be like, oh. See, all you'd have to tell the right people is it's the MCP. Really, what's that? The Moon People Communist Party. Did you say communist? Yes. Oh, the Moon People Communist Party? No, you did not say the Moon People Communist Party. And they go, yep, it's the Moon People Communist Party. And people on the right would go, well, why didn't you tell me? They're coming to take my freedom. Now, if you would ask that same person, can you tell me a little bit about communism? So they probably don't even know what the hell it is, but they know that it's evil. And as soon as you give them that word, the such and such Communist Party, it's time to run. They're up to no good. They're the ones that are going to take us out. And if it's some so-called lefty, all you got to give them is a human rights bullshit. Hey, what is it? Well, country X over here, they're really treating their people wrong. And the LGBT people, they don't have a rainbow flag in the entire country. And the trans, don't even start me on what they're doing to trans people. Right? The Muslims, we're bombing Muslims. We killed 1 million Muslims. And 1 million of them in Iraq, based on a lie. We bombed, slaughtered weddings full of Muslims. And the U.S. is like, we're really concerned with how the Chinese treat the Muslims in their population. I don't know. Did they kill 1 million of them? We're really concerned. And then the fraudulent Democrats, here they are. We're upset with Donald Trump. Why? The Muslim ban. He doesn't want them to come into this country. I disagree with the Muslim ban, but let's start here. Barack Obama attacked Syria. 600,000 dead, mostly all Muslims. How about this? He overthrew Libya, 25 to 100,000 dead and counting, mostly Muslims. 1 million Muslims dead in Iraq. But you're concerned because Donald Trump won't let them into the airport? I mean, I don't agree with him, but you killed 1 million of them in one country, and you're a human rights activist? And they got Americans like, yeah, well, what did the Trump say? Hey, how's China treating the Uyghurs? And when you look into that whole Uyghurs thing, it kind of starts to fall apart. When you look into that, it's like, hey, wait a minute, where'd those accusations come from? They came from a nonprofit who gets a lot of money from the U.S. intelligence, and a guy named Adrian Zintz, a guy who writes a bunch of books and hates the Chinese. If you start looking into the whole Chinese slave camps and Uyghur stuff, it's another thing. If you start to look into the accusations start to fall apart. And you know what I found? That here's what's odd, interesting. It's like Russiagate. It's like weapons of mass destruction. So if you want to believe that Russia's the bad guy, remember weapons of mass destruction, and they gave you all that bullshit and it all fell apart? And now Russiagate, and if you weren't a poor sap, and hopefully if you were, maybe you've woken up by now and realized that Russiagate was all lies. And if you're one of those people that believe the same crap about China, maybe you can wake up and say, these are the same people that lied to me about weapons of mass destruction. They lied to me about Russiagate. They lied to me about ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Gee, I wonder if they're lying now. They lie every time. Because it ain't got nothing to do with China. It ain't got to do with Russia. Doesn't have to do anything with Iran. Doesn't have anything to do with Venezuela. Doesn't have to do anything with any of them. The ruling elites in this country have screwed us to the ground. They have set up an economic system that funnels all the money to the top 1%. That's what they did. And now that people are getting hip to them, they need a patsy. They need somebody for you to look at. And they don't want you to look at Silicon Valley and Wall Street. They don't want you to look at Capitol Hill. So what do? It's China, it's Russia, it's whoever. And that's why I'm talking about anti-intellectualism. It's believing things based on information that you were given by other people that you don't know about, that you haven't researched, that you haven't looked into, you haven't done nothing. You just turned on Fox or MSNBC or whoever, and they told you, hey, there's Russia. Oh my God, there's China. Oh, Maduro's addicted. About 90%. That's why first of all, let me tell you something. People who know me know this. Putting my feet up now, getting comfortable. I don't believe any of this crap. If the government tells me something, hey, Garland, especially this, hey, that country over there, as soon as they start that, I know we're going bad. Country X, yeah. Oh, they're bad. Really? Yeah, they've got lots of corruption, unlike us. Okay. And they mistreat their people. Oh, certainly they don't. We don't do that here. We don't have police beating the crap out of the crowds, mangling people. No. We treat our people so wonderful here. So they've got to be bad, right? As soon as I hear that crap, it's out the window. I'm done. So I'm like kind of like a George Carlin. When the government tells me something, my default position is to say, I don't believe it. I don't care if I want to believe it. I don't care if it's against somebody that I don't like. I still don't believe it, especially if it's against somebody that I don't like. If you're on the left and they tell you, you got to be scared of, what was it now? The right-wing militias. You got to be scared of the Boogaloo Boys. Oh, the Boogaloo Boys. Now, they're a scary name there. I'm scared of the Boogaloo Boys. They'll dance me under dance all night and shit. Get out of here. I'm scared of the boogaloo. You got to be scared of the Proud Boys. You got to be scared of the QAnon people. When the government tells me that, I ain't scared of them. At that point, I'm like, oh, well, I know I got to be scared of them. When the government says, now, we've really got to confront Russia and China, I'm like, yeah, Russia and China, they probably aren't bad guys at this point. When they give me a boogeyman, I have enough experience to say, see, part of intellect, let's talk about this a little bit when I talk about anti-intellectualism. There are a couple things going on. There's reason, but don't let reason fool you. You can fool yourself if you only think you're going to reason your way. A couple of books. If you know, I got books all over the place. I read, right? There's a couple of books. One of them is right over there. It's called Voltaire's Bastards. Where is it? Oh, my God, great book. Great book. John Ralston Saul. Talk about reason. Voltaire's Bastards, the dictatorship of reason in the West. There's that. And there's another one called... oh gosh, what is not Voltaire. There's another famous philosopher. I can't think of his name. Something Descartes' error, same thing, and it's about reason. It's about how you can if you just use reason, you can make an idiot out of yourself, because what will happen is you won't reason. You will do motivated reasoning. So you will believe something and you'll reason yourself into justifying what you already believe. So reason, when somebody says believe science or believe reason, there are other things, right? So if I'm going to do investigations, I'm going to do reason. I'm going to reason my way out, right? But I'm going to use other things. What else am I going to use? I'm going to use history. Right? History. What about history? If someone says, hey, you know what? Russia and China and whoever, these are your guys, Venezuela, oh, they're scary. Here, let's start here. Who told me that? I read it in the New York Times and I saw it on MSNBC, CNN, and Fox. Well, if I use reason, I can look at what they said and put it together. But what if I add history into that and I say, those bastards have been lying to me for years? Let's see, they lied about weapons of mass destruction, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, they lied about. So if I'm just caught up in reason, I may be fooled if I only use reason. And I say, I'm so smart, because what happens is I get convinced of how smart I am. I'm so smart that I can figure this out on my own. Well, no, actually, I'm not. I know I'm a human being and I have my weaknesses, and I'll use motivated reasoning and I'll come to a conclusion that I already believed in the first place. But if I go in a different direction, and I say, I'm going to add history. I look at what they told me and I look at the history. They lied in the past. I look at the history of these countries. What are those countries? This country's going to invade us and overthrow us. And I look at Iran and I'm like, they ain't invading anybody in 1,000 years. I doubt if they're going to do it. It's been 1,000 years. Doesn't make sense. Well, if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, they'll immediately launch it at Israel. Well, Israel has hundreds of nuclear weapons. The interesting thing I've noticed about the supreme leaders of Iran, they're old, which means they're not suicidal. So now I'm supposed to believe that Iran, if they're madman, if they get one weapon, they will heave it at the Israelis. The Israelis will then fire back with multi-nuclear weapons and kill everybody in Iran. I'm supposed to believe that Iran's going to do that. So if I just listen to what they're telling me, well, they're telling me that. But if I use some reason, I use some history of Iran, etc., I'll figure out it's a bunch of bullshit. But it's scary. And you know what? That's how you that's how you convince people. Fear. Use fear. You get them to believe what you want. You get them to believe something that aligns with what they already believe. If you're on the right, and I can get you to, and I can say to you, this person on the left is your problem, whether it is or not, that aligns with what you believe. The problem is they didn't use the free market or something, whatever. Something that I know that aligns with what you believe, you're going to bite the hook. See, that's the way the con artist gets you. They know what you believe. They know what aligns with what you already believe. And they just give you something that aligns with that, something that works with that. Boom, you bite the hook, you're taken. That's anti-intellectualism. That, to me, intellectualism, to me, is simple. What do I know? What can I prove? Apart from what I already believe. Intellectualism, to me, has nothing to do with education. What can I show? Not what is colored by my beliefs. I used to do a radio show with a guy who was, I've done a lot of radio shows and TV shows and everything with conservatives, but I remember this guy would always say this. Well, as a conservative, we conservatives generally we believe this. And I just felt like I never want to be the person that says that. I don't know, people, progressives, whatever, liberals say the same thing. Garland Nixon is never going to say, I'm a member of this group. And as a member of this group, broadly, members of the group, we believe this. I would do me a favor. If you got a gun and I say that, shoot me in the head. Just put me out of my misery. I do not want to live anymore. If I get to a point where I say I'm a member of this group, and as a lemming, as an idiot, as a moron who joins a group and then group think we all believe something, if I get to that point, just hold my head under the water till I stop bubbling. Because that ain't, you know what? You know what I like? I like to find something that's true that goes against what I believe. I love to find something that I believe this, my ideology is here. I love to find something that proves me wrong because it convinces me that I'm still alive. It convinces me that I have intellect. It convinces me that I'm not just a blind sucker believing what the rest of my group believes. Then I am, in fact, a human being, right? Then I'm not just an expression. Like, you know what it's like? It's like a tomato plant with a bunch of tomatoes hanging off of it. They're all off the same plant. You have one tomato plant, it's got 20 tomatoes on it. I don't want to be a tomato. Oh, well, tell me, what do you believe, Garland? Not the same thing that everybody else who's on the left believes. Hey, how about you? Are you on the right? Yeah, what do you believe? Same thing everybody else on the right believes. You are a redundant human being at that point. That's all you are. You're a redundant human being. You're alive. Theoretically, in theory, you're alive. In theory, you're a human being. But if you're just part of a group and you're just repeating things that people in your group say, are you really a human being? What are you? If you have an intellect, you're not expressing that intellect. People say, I'm an individualist. Really? Yeah. Oh, I believe in individualism. Really? And then you talk to them and they believe they're just like caught in a group and so they'll say, I believe in individualism, but I get my identity from this group. And there's nothing wrong with that. I agree with people getting an identity and have a culture and all that. That's all good and fine. But do not allow that group, being a member of that group, to be what determines your positions on important issues. See every important issue as a separate individual issue that is unconnected to the rest of these issues. And believe what you can find. I believe what I can find. I believe what I can prove. And if I take a position and I say, this is my position, I'm going to be able to substantiate it, at least some. And if I can, I'll tell you, well, Garland, why do you believe that? I don't really know. It just seems to make sense. But that means I'm at the beginning of my journey. I've got a theory. I've got a thesis at that point. And now I'm going to work to either prove or disprove that thesis. Again, intellectualism says, I have a theory. I want to prove or disprove my theory. I don't want to prove my theory. Well, this is what I believe. This guy's a Russian bot. Okay, prove it. That's what I'm out to prove. No. As I said, I was an investigator. I was the commander of investigation divisions. I didn't say, hey, we got a suspect. Yeah, go out there and prove that he did it. No, go out there and find out whether he did it. And a lot of investigators and prosecutors go wrong when they have a prime suspect and they work to prove the suspect guilty. And I say, never, ever do that. If the suspect guilty, he's guilty. Let the evidence show whether he's guilty. And even then, sometimes the evidence says a person's guilty and they're not. But this is not about, to me, about the issues. This is about you. What do you think? What do you believe? What do you believe in? And are you just an expression of your group? Are you a person, a human being who says, when I believe in something, I want to be able to make sense of it? And if Garland Nixon, if I get Garland, call into Garland's radio show and I say, Garland, I believe this and you're wrong. And Garland Nixon's going to say, dude, I'm all ears. I'm ready to talk. You're the person call I was waiting for, the one that tells me that I'm wrong. I don't think you're wrong, but I'm here and I got what I believe in and I'm ready to put it on the table. You put yours on the table. Don't call me and get ready and fold up. Don't call me my radio show and fold up. The PFW 202-588-0893 on every Friday. Don't call that show and then say, oh yeah, by the way, I believe it, but I'm not sure I can tell you why. I might as well just hang up on you. At any rate, Let me ask everybody to do something, because I'm just about out. It's a beautiful Friday evening, but I don't want to Saturday night. I don't want to go any longer than an hour. At Garland Nixon on Twitter, Garland.Nixon on Instagram, plain old Garland Nixon on Facebook. I would ask everyone to follow, to subscribe, check. If you've been subscribed to me on YouTube, check, because they've been unsubscribing people. If you want to email me, it's garlandin@gmail.com. I also have an a Telegram channel. My name, Garland Nixon. Follow me on that. Let's see. Intellectualism is a threat to many. Just look at the CCC purges in the culture. There you go. The China. Why do you got to bring up China right now? The CCC purges. Yeah, just look at us killing 1 million people in Iraq just a few short years ago. The last thing we need to worry about is what they're doing in China. Furthermore, the CCP purges in the Cultural Revolution. Dude, our country does not have a beautiful record. We have no room to point to China for anything for human rights. Our human rights record is abysmal. We killed 2.5 million people in Vietnam. For what? At the same time, we bombed Cambodia and Laos. 500,000 people. We bombed villages. Literally, you know what they said in the Pentagon? Anything that flies on anything that moves, right? That's what they said, anything that flies. A country full of people who were, for the most part, villagers and rice farmers. We wiped them out with cluster bombs by the hundreds of thousands. So for us to wake up now and point to Russia or China or Iran or anybody for human rights is absurd, and the whole human rights thing is a lie. As soon as I see somebody say Chinese is doing something, I say, that what the hell right does the United States have to tell China what they're doing with anybody? None. We have no moral high ground. The world should look at the United States and say, you're starving the people of Venezuela for what? You have no right to do that. We overthrow countries and steal their stuff, overthrow countries and steal everything they have. And we're going to point to China. Tell me who China overthrew and killed 1 million people and stole all of their oil. I can't recall that lately. Please help me out. And we do it country after country after country. In the last 20 years, we overthrew Ukraine. We overthrew Libya. We overthrew Iraq. We're trying to overthrow Syria. We overthrew the government of Bolivia. We're trying to overthrow Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba right now. And we're going to point to China or Russia or somebody else and say they're not doing right and they've got human rights violations. That's a sad state of affairs. That the United States, that our country would in any way, shape, or form point to another country and have the unmitigated gall to say they've got a human rights problem. Nobody's got a human rights problem like we have. I mean that. Ask 1 million Iraqis that are dead. They won't answer. You know why? They're dead. In the 1990s, under the Clinton administration, and I'm sorry, whoever that is, they'll probably never listen to this show again. That's fine. I got to say what I got to say. In the 1990s, the United States had sanctions on Iraq. 500,000 children died. 500,000 children died as a result of those sanctions. Madeleine Albright was asked on television, do you think that's worth it? She said, I think it's worth it. 500,000. We bombed them and killed 1 million of them later on, 1.5 million Iraqis. And we're going to point to the Chinese. Oh, hey, it's terrible the way you're treating the Uyghurs there. We're going to point to the Chinese and say, yeah, did they kill 1.5 million Uyghurs? I don't think so. Did they overthrow their country and steal their country? I don't think so. The Chinese, the Russians, the Iranians, all of them are angels beside what this rapacious, vicious pirate empire has done. I've been to countries. I've seen the results I've seen entire countries of people who were hungry and starving and couldn't get things right now because of what we're doing. Under Donald Trump, that's why I got no love for him. And Biden's still doing the same thing. These people are criminals and crooks. So please spare anybody who's going to come on the chat and say, oh, China's doing this or that or that. Spare me that. If anybody who's going to point to some other country and say that other country has a human rights issue, spare me. I'm sorry. You may not like me. You may not unsubscribe from my channel. You may never watch this again. I don't care. I got to say what I believe. At any rate, I'm going to get going here. I've gotten freaked out. You know me. I get freaked out easily. Yeah, everybody knows me like, hey, you better watch what you say in the chat. That Garland will get freaked out very easily. But that's just who I am. That's the truth. To me, it's about justice. It's about everybody being fair. And it's not fair for this empire to go around the world trying to overthrow countries and steal their stuff and then point to another country and say China, they're not treating their people right. Russia, Iran, well, whoever. It's absurd. Absurd. Meanwhile, this country, let me add this. You got me fired up, so I got to finish this way. Meanwhile, America's letting its own people starve, get evicted, get thrown out of their homes. No food, lines, long. We're supposed to be the wealthiest country in the history of the world, and we got food lines to bloody hell. And we're pointing at other countries because they're not doing right. I'm sorry. You have to forgive me, but I think that's just not the real issue here. Americans need to wake up. Americans need to look inside of this own country. If you want to look for who's making your life miserable, if you want to look at who are the liars and the cheaters and the human rights violators, you look at Silicon Valley, you look at Wall Street, you look at Langley, the CIA, you look at Fort Meade, the NSA, you look on Capitol Hill. Okay, that's where you need to look. Stop looking outside of this country. The lying, thieving monsters are pointing outside of their country because they know that you'll bite the hook. Stop biting the hook. The people who are telling you who your enemies are your enemies. garlandin@gmail.com. Please, I'm going to ask you to share this video if you like it. If you don't, you might not. Share it, subscribe, hit the little bell, and I guess I'm out. Peace.